Good afternoon. Today we're announcing a new way for our city to engage with the residents who live in our neighborhoods. How we as a city reach out to the broad diversity that is Seattle, how we engage in the process of governing with them, reflects and should reflect our fundamental commitment to equity and to democracy. We should be constantly looking for ways to bring down barriers and open up opportunities and open up dialogue. Our city has changed dramatically over the 3 decades since the district councils were created. 3 decades ago, we communicated by picking up a phone or putting a letter in the mail. Today, through social media, many of you here, we communicate dozens of different ways. 3 decades ago, communities who are now part of the fabric of our city were just beginning to arrive here. An example would be our East African communities. 3 decades ago, 129 different languages were not spoken in the Seattle public school system. So Seattle must, as it was 3 decades ago, be on the cutting edge of innovation and creating new community engagement processes. Given this diversity, a diversity for a city that lives very differently than it did 3 decades ago, we have to find out how we reach people who can't go at 7 p.m. to a neighborhood meeting in a community center or a church basement. And for many of our young people, that's not how they meet or socialize at all. Their world has changed. For immigrants and refugees, and for low-income residents, communities of colors, renters, single parents, youth, I could go on and on. They're not part of this process. You can all think of people you know in your life who can't go to a community meeting because of their job or because of their family commitments. But they shouldn't be cut out of the discussion about how we as a city make our decisions and how we govern ourselves. The executive order I'm about to sign directs city departments to begin developing a robust community engagement plan and take steps towards dissolving the city's ties with the 13 district councils. Let me give you a 2013 demographic snapshot of our district councils. Attendees tended to be over 40 years of age, Caucasian, and the vast majority were homeowners. At least 6 district councils reported no people of color, and only 3 district councils reported any African American attendees. The world has changed, and it's time again for us to change how we engage. The district councils may still exist, but the Department of Neighborhoods resources that previously supported district councils will be redirected to our other efforts. Currently, district councils influence how we decide to spend money in the city, in our neighborhoods. We need a process that is inclusive and looks like the city itself to be involved in that budgeting exercise. Throughout the month of August, the Department of Neighborhoods will conduct civic engagement and focus groups. By September 26th, the department will also draft legislation for a new citywide community engagement framework and strategic plan, including a new Seattle Community Involvement Commission to be established by January 2017. The executive order also directs the Department of Neighborhood and our Seattle IT department to submit a digital engagement plan by March 1st to broaden accessibility. I am very, very, very excited by this opportunity. As I said, this is an exciting time in this city. We are a much more diverse city, and this is an opportunity for us to become a much more democratic and equitable city. In closing, let me thank in particular Kathy Nyland, the Director of the Department of Neighborhoods, and her staff for doing the good work that I think will lead to a city that is more in touch with itself. And with that, I'm going to introduce several community members who are here to speak. Laura Bernstein and then Phoebe Farrell-Sherman. Laura, I'll let you go first.
Hi, I am a renter in the U District, and I formed the District 4 Renters Council recently in response response to my experience as a renter not feeling like my voice was represented in the local neighborhood associations that I had engaged in. I felt as a renter that I needed to shine a bigger spotlight on my underrepresented group, even though we make up 52% of the city, and even more than that in the U District. It's just, you go to those meetings and you want to hear more about the issues that impact you. And I'm really excited about this step. I'm very hopeful. I'm also relieved. I feel like this is long overdue and very excited that this is happening. So thank you to the Department of Neighborhoods and the Mayor.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Farrell-Sherman. I'm a junior at Ingram High School, and I was a youth budget delegate with the Youth Voice, Youth Choice participatory budgeting program, and doing that was really a new step for me, and I was really excited about that. And everyone I've talked to about that since, all of my friends who are also youth in Seattle and young people, were really excited and interested in the idea of being involved. There are lots of ideas that youth have that they want to share, and lots of other communities too that it would be great if we could reach. So I'm excited about this as a step forward for an equitable system that all different groups of people can participate in. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who joined us here today, who've also advocated for a different approach for involvement among our very diverse community. So I'm going to sign the executive order, and then we'll be open for questions from the media. How many people want to have?
Why not, since we have the press here today, why don't I just do this real quickly?
Like that? Thank you all very, very much. Questions? We'll start there.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, some, before the details were out today, I would say, saw this as, in effect, a budget cut, because you'll be withdrawing the financial support from the district council. Is this going to result in an increase or a decrease in your upcoming budget?
It is not going to be a budget cut. This is money that will still go to the neighborhoods. But instead of basically a small demographic deciding how this money is spent, we're going to be sure that the diversity of every neighborhood gets to decide how this money is spent. So there's no budget cuts involved in this. But I think our own commitment to our racial and social justice initiative and the toolkit that we use to measure how we budget would require us to change how we budget in regards to the district councils. We simply need a more inclusive body in our neighborhoods to meet our race and social justice initiatives.
So that was sort of the question I wanted to ask, but I'm gonna keep pushing on it because so this is 13 FTEs, is that right? That are going to be the money is going to be going somewhere. Where is it going?
It's going to stay in the Department of Neighborhoods, and it's going to stay working with neighborhoods.
But do you have any more specifics?
No, that's the entire reason for the executive order, is to begin that process during the month of August to identify what we will move towards. What is that model that has the diversity that we need? What is a model? I probably should have called her up before I said this. What is a model for the woman who's cut my hair for 3 years? Immigrant, a single mother, and a small business owner. 6 p.m. in the evening doesn't work for someone like that. How do we create a model that includes folks like that? That's how we're going to reposition those existing positions. So again, this is not about budget cuts. This is about inclusionary processes as far as how we deal with our neighborhoods.
So the money you're talking about is the 1.2 million that funded the FTEs, and then
so
those staff positions gone, and the money's going to go to, you said, projects?
No, there are two different things here, and where's my director, just in case you want to just in case you want to help clarify this, jump in at any point. Now, one, there are small grants that go through these district councils, and we believe, based on our own commitment, our own toolkit on race and social justice, that we should have a truly diverse group of people, as diverse as this city, helping us in the neighborhoods decide how that money is programmed, number one. Number two, the positions are not going away. The positions will be involved with geographic neighborhoods. But those positions, we need to do some serious thinking to be sure that we're actually touching our very diverse communities. Kathy, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So we currently have 8 neighborhood district coordinators, and part of their job description is to staff district councils. What we are looking at is if we no longer support staff, what should we be supporting? Those positions are not going away. It's how we deploy and update those job descriptions. The job description of a district coordinator hasn't been updated in 15 years. So if you read it, a lot of those duties don't exist anymore. So it's just refreshing and deploying differently and more effectively.
And I bet that job description from 15 years ago didn't include things such as keeping the neighborhood, Department of Neighborhood's Facebook site updated. 15 years ago, who did I miss here?
Mayor, does the timing of this have anything to do with the general backlash coming from some of the neighborhood groups or the Queen Anne Community Council's appeal on backyard cottages?
No, it doesn't. I said when I came into office 2.5 years ago that we needed to communicate with our neighborhoods much differently than what we had. And actually, at the beginning of my administration, I used just one example. I talked in this very room about the years I spent having town hall meetings in my own legislative district. And basically 100 people showed up, and we had a particular conversation. And then the legislature developed or purchased software where you could do a telephone town hall meeting. And literally 3, 4, 5, 10,000 people would participate for an hour, and you'd have a very different conversation.
But you don't think more diverse community councils might be more welcoming of your housing affordability ideas? Or
I hope they will be.
There's roughly 15 people up there, and we've heard from 2. Who are they? How did they get here? How were they selected?
Would you guys like to, anybody want to introduce yourself?
And why are the people of color sitting in the back of the room and not up front if this is a diverse organization?
Who would like to introduce themselves?
I'd be happy to. My name is Evan Clifthorne. I'm a renter in Belltown, and I'm here as part of Project Belltown, which is an effort to increase density without displacing people that live in our community. We are the 6th fastest growing neighborhood in Seattle. Excuse me, 6th fastest growing neighborhood in America. And yet, when we try to come together as a community, it's often like herding cats. We've got a lot of different people that have been participating, and we've got even more that don't have access to the same tool set. So I'm here as part of that community because we believe that this is a step in the right direction, and that being more inclusive is something that this city has needed to do for a long time. So glad to see this mayor.
How were you selected, and when were you selected to be part of this?
This is something that I've been advocating for a very long time, that folks in Belltown.
But when did the city reach out to you
So selected for
Hold on.
for being up there
So,
today?
Kathy, how did we put this together?
So, so it was 2 things. I have a file of complaints that I've received over the years about various community councils or just systems, decisions, and whatnot. So when the media advisory happened, we tapped into that file and did an email blast to people that we've had conversations with. And that's who's standing behind me. People who I've had ongoing conversations with, not in just the last day or the last week or the last year, but over the last decade.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next question.
So there was an audit in 2009, I believe, with the same system, and from my understanding, only one recommendation of the 10 that came out of that audit was ever implemented. So I'm just wondering why, and I think some of the concerns in 2009 were similar, that the system wasn't inclusive enough, so I'm wondering why, I guess it took this long, or why now?
I wasn't mayor. I've been mayor for just over 2 years, and so this is what I'm acting on.
Kathy, do you happen to know?
Kathy was on council staff. I think Greg Nichols was mayor at the time, and you'd have to ask them why they didn't implement it.
Off topic, Mayor, could you speak to the resignation of the head of the police guild?
Well, the police guild is a union, a member of the King County Labor Council, and as with the dozens of unions that have public employees in Seattle, they make leadership decisions, and I am required under the law, as I should be, as management, to work with the unions.
He's been a supporter of reform speak to your concerns or your confidence that those things will move forward?
So, reform has to move forward. We don't have any choice. I inherited a police department under a federal consent decree. Pretty amazing thing for a northern city on the West Coast. So the department has no choice. We will follow the federal court. We will work, as I said many times, with the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. How they decide to vote is truly, up to them. We'll see what happens. I have to tell you, the leak of the collective bargaining agreement was not helpful. It's created a lot of anger. It's something I would have expected to see in Scott Walker's Republican Wisconsin and not in Democratic Seattle. So the situation is a difficult situation. I'll let you follow up and then we'll go back there.
This last question. Some folks feel like you did not speak up strongly enough against what Ron Smith said when he posted that Facebook post, given how divisive it was.
I think I have, and as recently as last night on Q13.
Could you
Sure,
express your thoughts?
it is not helpful. I think so Ron is somebody I have known to be interested in reform, and in many of your own media outlets, he's talked about that cops had to get issues around race right and around LGBT issues right. So I was very surprised by the post because it didn't reflect the person I had seen quoted in the media. And as I said twice last week in this very room, we are in a time when I go out to communities of color, they are in pain and they are scared. When I meet with police officers, they are in pain and they are scared. And this kind of language is not helpful. It is not how we get over that pain. It's not how we get people over the fact that they are scared, regardless of where they are on the issue. I said that twice last week. I said it on Channel 13 News last night. You. Excuse me, Josh.
Thank you, Mayor Murray. So where did this originate from? I know it came from the council of a SLI, a strategic statement of legislative intent. Is that how this originated? So did this come from the council to review the?
There's several parallel processes going on here. The council had a slide that's a statement of legislative intent asking for information. So that's one source. The other, I think, is I have clearly laid out again and again that this city needed to change how it engages the people who live in this city. And by the way, we don't often just limit ourselves to organizing or socializing based on our physical neighborhoods. We are also a series of communities. Sometimes people are more involved in their environmental issues than they are in their neighborhood issues, but that's how they engage as good neighbors. Sometimes it's the East African communities in the city. Sometimes it's the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. So I have said from the beginning that we needed, and I pointed this out in the social media tools that we do not use, that we needed to find different ways to reach out to the city. When I appointed Kathy Nyland as the new director of the Department of Neighborhoods, I indicated at that time I expected a new approach to how we move forward. When we had a neighborhood summit during my first months in office, Jim Street, who helped write much of the information we're talking about, expressed his surprise at that point, it had been 28 years, that in 28 years what he did had not basically been updated. So this comes from a series of things that have gone on, as well as Kathy mentioned, a small volume of complaints around issues of diversity.
I have a question about, this backlash that is happening in social media and in the traditional neighborhood groups. That's inevitable, but I'm wondering, when there was a backlash against Tala initially, when the story about single-family zoning changes leaked, you sort of backed off and said single-family zoning is sacrosanct. And I'm wondering, if there's a similar backlash against this, how are you going to respond?
So first of all, let's talk about what I backed off on, okay?
I'd rather talk about this.
So, but it will get to this. There were 65 recommendations, and one of those recommendations dealt with the issue of, an additional unit on your property. So I'm trying to avoid acronyms here. In a single-family neighborhood. And we heard from, we made our announcement. There was a lot of blowback on that, a lot of misinformation about that. We heard in the media from two council members, Councilmember O'Brien and Councilmember Burgess, that they were very concerned that this could tank the whole thing. Paula, the major number of those 20,000 affordable units in Paula have not gone away. And so what I said at the time is I did not want that issue of additional units confused with the larger issue of getting the mandatory inclusionary zoning and the linkage fee and commercial property and the other 64 recommendations. That it was quickly becoming the hair on the tail wagging the dog. So what I am doing here is not anything we are going to back away from, because the people in this city want this. And by the way, you know, you go to a neighborhood group and people are angry. Social media is angry. But generally when I'm out in the city, and I'm out every night and weekend, I hear something very different. I hear a city that wants more housing that's affordable. I hear a city that wants to be more inclusionary. And quite honestly, last week, as I mentioned, as I moved through communities in pain and police officers in pain, what I heard was, how do we move forward? Well, we cannot move forward if most of the people in the city, the diversity of the city, are not represented in the very neighborhood groups that this city helps fund and runs. Yes?
Okay, there we go.
You guys are being very polite today.
I had a question. Even before the SLI process started, I was reminded, there was a process, and I believe it was after you took office, about looking at the neighborhood matching funds and how they would change. I don't see at first glance this addressed in the FAQs. Maybe Ms. Allen can answer this, is how this will affect that process. Will they change themselves, the actual funds and what's available?
So let me address that a little bit. The city has a lot of different grant sources through different programs throughout, not just the neighborhood ones, but there are other ones throughout the city. And one of the things that we're looking at in general is how do we make sure they align and complement each other. As a result of these changes, who helps us decide how those neighborhood grants are spent and where they go will change. But that process is what Kathy and her office will engage in looking at recommendations for.
There's some cycles that are underway right now.
Those aren't going to be changed. The cycles are the cycles, so yeah, it's prospective.
One more question. You're probably glad I don't usually come to these.
Erica, I miss you.
I'm just curious why this requires an executive order.
I think it's clear that, first of all, you asked me would I backtrack. I'm not going to be sending my own executive order. So that's a message to the community that this is going to happen. It's clear an executive order is a direction to the administrative. I can't do an executive order on a lot of things. I have to go through council. But when it comes to the departments, they're part of the executive branch. It's instructing my departments to work with the Department of Neighborhoods to develop a truly effective community engagement process. And folks, this is, you talked about Holla. Sometimes this is just about, if we're going to put in a traffic circle. Sometimes it's about how we change whatever it is that we're doing on transportation. As you know, the 23rd Avenue has been a pretty controversial issue. That was something that was decided before I got here, but maybe if we had had a different process in how we engage with the Department of Neighborhoods, or how they offer technical assistance to the Department of Transportation or to the Economic Development Office, we may have had a different outcome and have had less of a painful situation. Last question?
So
You get the last question.
I believe that there is also a review currently in process of the district council system, and it was set to come out on Friday. So why release the executive order now as opposed to after they had a chance to look at those
I'm not sure if
recommendations?
It is still coming out on Friday.
Okay.
So when this is over, we're going to go back to that report.
So I guess, what about that timeline? Why not have them look at the recommendations and then
Because,
make a change?
it's simply time to move ahead. I mean, I think the report, I have not seen it. I've only been briefed on an earlier draft of it. I don't think these things will be in conflict with each other at all. So with that, thank you all very much.